Number 10. Leanne Bowman. In May of 2021, Leanne Bowman was arrested for conspiring to have her ex-mother-in-law murdered. It's alleged that the realtor and powerboat racer of the Lake of Ozarks region in Missouri was in search of a hitman for her hated in-law and was willing to pay a sum of $1,500 for it to look like an accident. Bowman blamed her mother-in-law for her strained relationship with her daughters and believed that she would convince her ex-husband to take her to court for full custody of their kids. By finding a hitman, the perceived source of all her supposed problems could be resolved, and she set out to make that happen. Bowman consulted a close friend for tips and leads to hire in a contract killer, and even texted one of her daughters a cryptic message about their grandmother's death and plead to remain loyal to their real mother. She downplayed the text, but was arrested just days later when her acquaintance gave her up to the police. There is an alleged recording of Bowman talking about her plans, but she vehemently countered the charges. Bowman claimed that she was goaded and betrayed while intoxicated. Bowman's ex-husband made his side clear by immediately filing a protective order against her. The man stated he'd suffered enough in the past 15 years, pointing to the woman's perception of being above the law as one of the sources of his grief. Number 9. Kenneth Parks and Barbara Woods. In Canada, 1987, Kenneth Parks left his home in the middle of the night and drove over 12 miles to his in-laws' house and tried to kill them both. He bludgeoned his mother-in-law to death with a tire iron first, and then used his bare hands to try and choke his father-in-law. He then turned himself in and immediately confessed to his crimes. Parks was an avid gambler who had recently stolen money from his family. However, in spite of the police having a clear motive, as well as a surviving victim and a confession, he walked away a free man. Parks' defense stated that he'd fallen asleep watching TV. It was argued that he'd committed the crime and the confession all while unconscious and therefore couldn't be held accountable for his actions. Experts testified in support of his defense, and the jury found him innocent, sparing him not only a life sentence, but a trip to a psychiatric hospital as well. The case was appealed all the way up to the Canadian Supreme Court, but his punishment remained unchanged and had essentially only amounted to a prescription for sleep medication. Number 8. Alexandra R. Bloodgood. Alexandra R. Bloodgood was fatally shot in the back of the head on May the 17th of 2020 after her husband and his brother had gotten into a fight over laundry. Her brother-in-law, Shane Finnell, had come over and was in discussion with her husband when it turned violent. Finnell threw a potted plant and walked up behind the unassuming R. Bloodgood and shot her point blank in the head. Faced with the reality of his actions, he immediately stumbled to the neighbor's yard muttering that he's done a horrible thing and urging them to call the police. He faced charges of second-degree murder and unlawful use of a weapon. Number 7. Nicole Montalvo. Mother of one, Nicole Montalvo from St. Cloud, Florida, was killed in October of 2019 over custody of her 8-year-old son. A year prior, she had made a bid to distance herself from her husband, Christopher Otero Rivera, and his family after he was sent to jail for kidnapping and abusing her. While he was incarcerated, she divorced him and temporarily stopped allowing her in-laws to see their grandchild. Otero Rivera and his father, Angel Rivera, were enraged by this and wanted to make her disappear to get full custody. They weren't at all subtle regarding their intentions, and neighbors testified that for over a year, they would tell anyone that listened how they wanted Montalvo dead. Rivera offered bribes of up to $10,000 for her disappearance and contacted his son's former cellmate to bribe him into planting drugs in her car. But no one would do it for them. Her body was eventually discovered buried over 2 separate Rivera properties. It had been burned and crudely dismembered. Her father-in-law and her ex-husband were convicted on all charges related to second-degree murder, tampering with evidence, and abuse of a human body. Both were sentenced to life in prison. Number 6. Gordon Ramsay. Celebrity chef Gordon Ramsay has had a tumultuous past with his in-laws. In 2017, Gordon Ramsay sent his father-in-law and both his brothers-in-law to prison, and it had taken him nearly 6 years to get them charged. The dispute first started back in 2011 when Gordon Ramsay fired his father-in-law, Chris Hutchison, as CEO of his empire. The sacking spouted a very public battle between the two in which Ramsay published an open letter claiming Hutchison ran the company like a dictator, yet pleaded with his mother-in-law to not cut ties with his wife and children, who had threatened to sue. There was a subsequent legal battle, and Ramsay accused his father-in-law of conspiring with his brothers-in-law to hack into his emails and gain access to personal and legal information. He employed both brothers in IT, who were able to breach into what was deemed his personal property rights 828 times over a 5-month period. The mastermind, Ramsay's father-in-law, got the heaviest sentence at 6 months. Number 5. Amanda Taylor. The death of 67-year-old Charles Taylor in April of 2015 marks the gruesome end to a tragic story. He was savagely murdered by his daughter-in-law, Amanda Taylor, only 1 year after his son Rex had taken his own life. Rex had struggled with prescription drug abuse. After his passing, Amanda blamed his father, Charles, whom she saw as an enabler and provider. Amanda, blinded by rage and grief, decided to take justice into her own hands. A previous obsession she shared with her late husband on serial killers soon sprouted a dark seed in her mind. In an act of sadistic revenge, Amanda drove to Charles's house in Ironto, Virginia, and stabbed him 31 times. In the blood-soaked aftermath, Amanda took a selfie, wielding the bloody murder weapon with his limp corpse still behind her. She posted the image on social media and sent it to a friend, who authored a true crime blog in the hopes that she'd post it. The police were notified instead. Amanda was eventually caught and readily confessed to her crimes. Despite all the evidence, Amanda pled not guilty at her trial in a bid to get her story told, a feat in which she succeeded. After receiving a sentence of life in prison for first-degree murder, she unabashedly partakes in an interview from behind bars, stating she has absolutely no remorse for what she did, as she was just doing something that made her feel good, and that she had wanted to see him die. Although she initially wanted to receive the death penalty, Amanda subsequently planned to appeal her conviction in Supreme Court. Number 4. Nesma M. In the middle of winter in Berlin 2015, a husband and his parents decided to team up with an Islamic miracle healer to perform an exorcism on his wife as a cure for her infertility. The 22-year-old victim, identified as Nesma M., was forced by her husband and in-laws to drink excessive amounts of a salt water concoction in the hope of expelling supposed demons from her body. The exorcism would prove extremely detrimental to her health, and she died in hospital only a week later due to pulmonary embolisms and excess fluid in the brain. In 2020, over 4.5 years after her death, German authorities finally officially arrested her husband and in-laws on the charge of causing bodily harm resulting in death. Number 3. Jason Corbett. On August 2nd of 2015, native Irishman and father of 2 Jason Corbett was found murdered in his home in Lexington, North Carolina. His wife and his father-in-law admitted to bludgeoning him to death, but pleaded it had been in self-defense. Ex-FBI agent and father-in-law to the victim, Tom Martins, alleged that while he was spending the night at his daughter's house, he heard a commotion coming from upstairs and found Corbett strangling his daughter. Prosecution and defense agreed on the following course of action. Martin used an aluminium baseball bat to beat Corbett while his daughter hit him across the head with a cement brick, conveniently left in the bedroom. Martins and his daughter Molly Corbett were convicted of second-degree murder in 2017, largely based on the distinct lack of any self-defense injuries on their bodies. Yet in 2021, an appeal for another trial was granted on the basis of new evidence. Corbett's daughter, who was 8 at the time of his murder, has strongly spoken out against this decision. Today's topic was requested by Shayna Bland and Anubis. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Shane Jeffrey Barker. On August 3rd of 2009, along with very few other clues, Shane Jeffrey Barker's body was found with 4 fatal gunshot wounds at his home in Tasmania. Authorities offered a $250,000 reward for any information, but within such a tight-knit community, no one came forward. 11 years later, the cold case finally got a chance at closure with the arrest of his parents-in-law, Cedric Harper Jordan and Nolene June Jordan. The 38-year-old victim had previously been married to their daughter and even shared a child with her. But police didn't suspect the woman's involvement. Barker's heartbroken father died before finding those involved with his son's murder. The rest of his family will wait with bated breath at the upcoming trial. Join the They Will Kill You team by rocking the latest merch from theywillkillyou.com. Order yours today to be one of the first to spread the word. Number 1. Surjit Athwal. Surjit Athwal was lured from her home in West London and across 2 continents to India by her mother-in-law, where she was drugged, murdered, and dumped in a river in December of 1998. Surjit had suffered non-stop abuse from her husband and mother-in-law ever since the start of her 10-year-long arranged marriage. Moving in with her husband's family at the tender age of 16, Surjit's mother-in-law, Bakan Kaur Athwal, began a reign of terror in which she controlled what she wore and said, limited her access to her friends and family, dictated how to raise her child, and encouraged her son to physically discipline her. Surjit's sister had also married into the family to another brother. Over the years, both sisters were treated like slaves and live-in maids. When Surjit became pregnant with her second child, she made a desperate attempt to escape her in-laws by fleeing their house and filing for divorce, but eventually returned and bore them a long-desired son. Nonetheless, Bakan saw Surjit as nothing more than a smear of shame on the family and devised a plot to get rid of her, even telling Surjit's sister of the plan. Bakan convinced Surjit to join her on a trip to India but never brought her back. Surjit's sister was threatened into submission, and it wasn't until 2004 that she mustered up the courage to reveal the truth. She went into hiding, and within 2 years, Bakan and her son were convicted on murder charges. It marked the first time in a British court that someone was convicted of an honor killing outside of the UK. Thanks for watching. Would you rather be forced to bring your in-laws on your honeymoon, or listen to a song you hate on repeat for 24 hours? Let us know in the comments section below.